between your two songs, Laura, you basically just gave my talk, but I'm gonna talk anyway.
Yes, I'm glad.
It works that way so often. I love it. Today's talk is the path of vulnerability. And I want to begin with an experience I had, oh my goodness, back in the 90s that I still call up every time I think of vulnerability. I was sitting over coffee with a friend of mine, and he was sharing some of his tenderheartedness and his fears as he was going through a divorce. At some point, I said, "Have you shared this with your wife?" And he immediately looked at me as though I just told him to go out and dance in the street. I wouldn't do that. It would have power over me. I'm afraid that's how many people, especially in the last century, but even in this century, still look at vulnerability. That it's something that's risky and dangerous, and maybe not something we really want to do. Thanks to Brene Brown and Mark Nepo, who has the book of the month this month, we're beginning to develop a different view of what vulnerability is and its gifts. Here's what Mark Nepo suggests. At the deepest level, the reason to be vulnerable has nothing to do with whether we have company or not, and nothing to do with whether we belong or are seen or heard. A flower blooms not because it has an audience, but because that's how it becomes what it was born to be. A hawk flies not because birders are watching, but because that is what it was put here to do. For human beings, how we grow is inextricably linked to being vulnerable. Because being vulnerable makes us malleable enough to transform, to find our place in the larger universe and feel the oneness of things, to be open-hearted and willing to show up as who we are allows us to come more and more into the fullness and richness of our being. That's what I think is emerging in this teaching and in other communities around this country and elsewhere. As Brene Brown puts it succinctly, to be vulnerable is to show up and let yourself be real. Show up and take the risk and the power of being real. So that's what I'm going to focus on this morning. First, to show up. In order to do that, you need to know more about who you are, what wants to show up. You need to let go of those things that are old stories, are expectations you've always had and never reflected upon, beliefs that maybe were adequate or appropriate back in your teenage years, but now maybe not so much. They might be stories of what will someday happen. Oh my goodness, when I have. Or if only I made a different choice, gone to such a college instead of the college I went to. Those keep you stuck and outside of who you actually are. Some years ago, I worked with a minister who had licensed about the same time I did. He was a lovely gentleman, and he had a variety of roles at our center. He sang in the choir, he sometimes talked on Sundays. He was a volunteer in his neighborhood. He was actually he wasn't at our center, my mistake, but it's not Dr. Edward. He was so open and loving and friendly to everyone he met. One day after he retired from his place at that other center, someone asked me what he was like. And I realized I knew all the roles he played and all the ways he served the center, not our center. And I knew nothing at all about what was important to him. He used his roles to, in a way, wear a mask. I'm a minister who talks on Sunday. I'm a tenor in the choir. In my neighborhood, I'm a person who looks out for the children. But who he was in his essence, I had never seen, and that made me sad. So that's another way we sometimes hide out. It actually, for those of you who know, I tend to say I'm Tara, not Reverend Tara. I'm trying not to hide out in my expectations and your expectations of what and who a minister is. So watch out for and pay attention to the roles you play and what's behind the roles. Here are a couple of ideas on how you get to know yourself without it being overwhelming or a job. The first thing I found incredibly useful for me was to discover what makes your heart sing, to really listen within yourself to what matters. There are a variety of things I can do, and I'm sure there are a variety of things that you can do as well. But not all of them are things that I want to do, that I enjoy doing, that fulfill me. Speaking on Sundays is one of them. Balancing the budget is not one, even though I'm really good at it. And so get to know those bits about who you are. What brings you alive? What matters to you? And get to know them for another reason too. I was talking with someone just a while ago, and we were talking about what people longed to do. And she mentioned a friend of hers who'd always talked about wanting to have a pizza restaurant. That was really exciting and important to him. And darn it, if only he could do that, except he was too old and he couldn't afford it and he didn't know about running businesses. So he never even tried. He got so caught up in the how of what he wanted that he missed an opportunity to look at why that engaged him, why he loved that, and maybe find something else like community activities or potlucks with family and friends, or who knows what. It wasn't necessarily the thing he needed to do, but reflecting on why he wanted to do it, what made it special and important to him, and then how else might he find those same joys and delights, that sense of satisfaction. One of the ways we get trapped is, I want a red Mercedes convertible. Someone gifts me a blue van, and I go, oh, that's not what I need. But what I actually wanted was freedom to go places I wanted to go with safety and reliability. That blue van was perfect. I could even camp out in it if I wanted to. Don't get caught in the details of the how. Pick up the feeling and the why something brings you alive. Another way to get to know yourself that's a little more challenging is to be compassionately curious about those parts of yourself you really don't want other people to know about. Those parts that make you feel guilty or ashamed or not good enough. Those elements of your feelings aren't to be hidden away and kicked out of your life as if they're not part of you. They're just as important as the joys and the gifts that you bring, because your life and where you are in this moment is a combination of all of that. Not just, oh, Tara's a great minister and she speaks really well and but also that Tara gets cranky with her daughter-in-law, as many mothers-in-law do. What's that about, Tara? I sometimes sit and ask myself, what is it that that's telling me about me that I want to understand, and not say, oh, I'm never going to do that anymore, but what can I learn from that reaction I sometimes have? And I'm imagining that all of you have some of those places where, as I talked about last week, someone gets under your skin, and rather than consider it and reflect on what that's telling you, instead, oh, I'm a good mother-in-law. How can I not always like my daughter-in-law? Da, 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 da. It's not either or. It's saying, wow, I have some stuff I need to look at, but not hiding it from myself and other people. As you may remember, those of you who were here last week, I am a little bit tender about what other people think about me. For example, when I give a talk, right? And what do I want to say about that? Oh, no, don't, it's not available, forget it. Do any of you ever worry about something? Never, no, right? Okay, good. Well, for me, I worry about being articulate enough, welcoming enough, grateful enough, yada, 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 yada. I imagine all of those judgments are coming from you all, or people in my community, or my family. Guess what? The most critical judge whenever I'm in the room is me. That's right. Absolutely. All of those things that I think someone else is judging me around are actually areas where I'm judging myself. Hard as it is to say this, until I can come to love and accept all of who I am, I'm not going to be completely open and available to other people, because I'm going to feel like I've got to not show them my cranky mother-in-law, or I've got to not show them my controlling bureaucrat, or whatever fantasy being lives in me as a part of me. It's all okay. It's all okay. One of the authors I love and have done a book study about multiple times is Mary O'Malley. She's the author of What's in the Way is the Way. Rather than just talking about stuff, she offers practices and contemplative prompts and other things. This is what she says about letting go of that inner critic that we talk about so much. It wasn't until I discovered how to listen to myself that I began to open up again. Rather than always being in fix-it mode, I learned how to meet myself exactly as I am, opening into the place beyond judging, fixing, getting rid of, and trying to understand. I learned the art of being present for my own experience, no matter what it is, and the art of meeting myself, even the so-called unacceptable, unmeetable parts of myself, in my own heart. That may be that meeting and accepting yourself in your own heart may be the essential element of vulnerability. Because when you are accepting of yourself, compassionate about yourself, even loving yourself, you have a strength and a center and a presence that isn't going to be knocked off by the fact that someone walked out on your class the other day. That doesn't impact who you know you are. There's something that Laura is saying that I made a note of, and it had to do with things to accept and things to choose. There's some things that you're stuck with, like how old you are. You can't, well, you can change that, but I don't recommend that. And there are other things that you choose, that you want to do. Both what you have to accept and what you choose are important. So that's the first bit about showing up with trust and clear intention. Choose those elements that matter to you, that are important to you, that you want to do because you know your essential self. And it's something you come to know better and better over time. It's fascinating. I was looking back at some of my Sunday talks from when I started. I started giving talks back in 2015. And I looked at them and went, oh my goodness. Yeah, it's a good enough talk. But I would do it so differently today. And I think that's true for each one of you, that all of us are evolving and blossoming. But we don't notice that unless we pay attention. And when we do, it's like, wow, that's remarkable. So the second part of Brené's definition of vulnerability is let yourself be real. And we've kind of already touched on that a bit. Give yourself permission to take risks, even if you don't know what the result will be. We could simply take Mark Twain's advice. I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened. That may work, particularly when it brings a smile or a chuckle to you. Here's another practice that may be useful to move beyond the voice in your head that reminds you how much better you could be. In our spiritual tradition, in choosing what it is we're going to do, we often use the phrase, what is mine to do? Have any of you heard that in classes or elsewhere? So that way of focusing on yours to do versus all the stuff that other people have on their plate is really important, because one of the elements that's a reality for all of us is we have limited time. No one has time to get everyone else's work done. Not a single person in the universe. None of the elevated teachers, none of the amazing ministers, none of the politicians, no one can do everybody else's work. But you can do what you are called to be here and do here. You can do and be who you are. So here's a strategy on that from the Stoics. I think I touched on it a little bit last week, and I want to expand a bit more on it. They were a very pragmatic group of folks. And one of the ways they were pragmatic was to say, there's a whole bunch of stuff we can worry about. It's a waste of time to worry about what we have no control over. So they sorted out, as I talked about last week, what is mine to do and what is not mine to do. Here are some examples of what is mine to do. Doing the best I can in any circumstance. Acting in ways that align with my values. Taking time to center myself when I feel edgy. Those are all things I can choose to do. Here are some things that are not mine. The response, but that's not what I wanted. It's not fair. That Josie Jones doesn't like me. That rush hour traffic is absurd, even in Santa Rosa. What if no one shows up for the party? None of those elements are outcomes I can change or guarantee. I can't guarantee that everyone I invited will show up for an event. I cannot change rush hour traffic. And so to get all caught up in worrying about that wastes the limited energy that each of us has, limited time and energy. And it puts us in a place of fretting about Josie Jones rather than getting to know what matters to us better. And it's not a both, that's not an area where you can always do both. One of the few things that is finite in our tradition is our time in this body. I invite you to use that time and that resource in ways that bring you alive, help you to blossom, bring you joy, are playful, and not those ways that everybody else expects you or needs you to be. Because that takes you away from your own essential self, which is the really, really important element. Another antidote to, ooh, that feels too scary and uncertain, when you're not letting when you don't let yourself be real, is trust. I don't say patience, which some people use, or faith. I say trust. Trust in yourself and trust in that amazing on-call superpower that goes by many names. Ask yourself gently and lovingly if you trust your little s self. I have not always trusted myself. I had to learn to set boundaries, to say no, to explore, to actually discover what I wanted, to appreciate what I was already doing. Even though it didn't fit with the, oh, Tara, you're special, you're going to do all these things list. That wasn't mine to do. That was someone else's expectation of what I was supposed to do. I had to learn to trust what I knew inside of me about who I was and what mattered. Sometimes kind of a boring process. You gotta do lots of journaling, reflecting, talking with friends, reading stuff. And yet, sometimes in that ongoing practice or walking around your block, you suddenly recognize something. That's what makes it worth the trouble, because you see the wondrousness of who each one of you is. Each one of you has this amazing essence within you, because as we say, each of us is an expression of the divine. And how in heaven's name could the divine expression not be worthy of trust? So one step is, again, getting to trust yourself and forgiving yourself in those moments when you screw up. It's okay. It's okay. And then, which probably you all are more familiar with, or maybe not, trusting that on-call superpower. Sometimes for me, it's the beloved. Sometimes it's the all in all in all. Sometimes it's God or spirit. What are some names you give to the divine? Just call source,
Universe,
universe,
the infinite,
the infinite,
all it is.
all that is.
I met somebody that used sugar daddy in the sky.
Sugar daddy in the sky. Yeah.
Great I am.
The great I am. Yeah. See, a part of the laughter in that is that spirit isn't just, oh my goodness.
Then someone said, but can I have a sugar mama?
And that's also possible.
Absolutely.
And that laughter and that that frivolity is another sign that spirit is all that is, including sugar daddies and sugar mamas and beloveds and spirits. God shows up, the divine, the transcendent, the all that is, shows up as each of us needs it to show up. It, she, her, they, whatever. And that availability is always, always trustworthy. Even if you're so that all you can do is say, help. It's there. It's there. Here's how Oprah Winfrey speaks to that. I have felt the presence of God my whole life. Even when I didn't have a name for it, I could feel the voice bigger than myself speaking to me. And all of us have that same voice. Be still and know it. It's always there speaking to you and waiting for you to hear it. In every move, in every decision, I wait and I listen. I'm still. I wait and listen for the guidance that's greater than my meager mind. So what I know is God is love and God is life. And your life is always speaking to you. So I trust myself to stand in my values, doing what is mine to do. And I also trust that deeper knowing, presence, buddy, awesome allness, quirky jokester, however spirit shows up to me, to be present, available, and drop little bits into my life, ideas, awareness, gifts, whenever that's needed. And I know that's also true for each one of you. I'm about at my time, so I'm going to skip to another of my favorite people, Nadia Bolz-Weber. She's a minister. I think she's now in the Episcopal tradition. I didn't check up on that before I wrote this up. And she is unapologetically herself. All the good stuff, the bad stuff, and everything in between. And she talks about showing up just the way you are. I'm going to read a short paragraph that she wrote in one of her blogs, but I'm going to start by reading the first sentence and then pausing. And I want you to notice what bubbles up as you hear this sentence. And maybe close your eyes and even see what comes to mind when you hear the sentence. Be shameless, like a middle-aged woman with stretch marks swimming in a two-piece. Be shameless, like a middle-aged woman with stretch marks swimming in a two-piece. All right, I heard some chuckles and I expect there's some second level things that bubble up. That's another way to notice who you are and what resonates with you. So here's the entire paragraph. Be shameless like a middle-aged woman with stretch marks swimming in a two-piece. We can only really know and be known when we show how life has marked us. I never really feel a connection to someone until they have shared with me the lumpy, broken, or even petty parts of themselves. Our pain and failure, the things we so often try to hide, the things that create shame, the things that scar are what give us texture. And without texture, there is nothing for others to connect to. Accepting ourselves, knowing ourselves, standing in the heart of who we are. That's the door into vulnerability. And it's not a willy-nilly, oh, talking to the person behind you at the supermarket. Do you know about my daughter-in-law? She da 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 da. No. You share your heart and your essence with people that you know and trust, not simply with everyone. But you do open in ways that you are seeing, and you also can see others because your roles, your filters, your masks are set down. And you are vulnerable in the luscious, rich way of being present and visible and coming from the essence of who you are. As Ernest Holmes reminds us, It is through the revelation of the self, to the self, that one understands life, that one approaches the power that is at the heart of God. And that power is at the heart of who we are. And so may it be. And so it is. Let's take a moment of prayer. Oh, breathing in, settling within into that space that is infinite, bliss-filled, wise, creative, beautiful, the heart of who I am, the heart of each one of us in this moment of prayer. That divine that expresses in, through, and as me with love, with power, with joy, with laughter, with creativity, since it is everywhere present, is available and present in each and every being on this planet. No exceptions. Aware of this amazing truth, I celebrate this life. I celebrate the freedom to choose. I celebrate the ability to know what matters to us. I celebrate life. I simply celebrate life. Knowing this, I am so grateful. It's so simple and so powerful that gratitude just radiates and abounds in me. I let it be into the law, into love, into life, already so. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you.